making time on your Saturday to come and join the District Attorney's Town Hall, I'd like to introduce our District Attorney Jenna Wallace and Deputy District Attorney Thornicroft. Thank you so much for coming today. I know that we're close to the holiday season and there's probably a lot of things on your to-do list, and so I really appreciate you guys coming and taking the time to spend with us this morning. I'm hopeful that I have a pretty loud voice, so I'm hoping that everyone can hear me. If you cannot hear me, please just raise your hand and I will try to talk a little bit louder. As she indicated, my name is Jenna Wallace. I am your elected Lincoln County District Attorney, and I think that it's really important for you to understand what the District Attorney's Office does, especially in terms of criminal prosecution. So I've created a presentation. I'm hoping it will be around 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions and discussions kind of about current issues in the DA's office. I wanted to initially go over kind of what the criminal process looks like. Unless you have been part of our system, either as a victim or maybe as a family member of someone who's been charged with a crime, you probably don't really know what that process looks like. And so initially, right, when a crime is committed, the initial response typically is law enforcement, right? You call 911 or maybe you call non-emergency dispatch, and you're telling them what happened to you, what happened to your house, things like that. And they are sending law enforcement to respond. And law enforcement at that point, they're interviewing people, they are investigating the crime, and they are ultimately determining whether or not they can make an arrest, whether or not there's probable cause to believe that someone has committed a crime here in Oregon. Once that process is completed, they then refer the case to the District Attorney's Office. So if they arrest someone and take them to jail, or if they can't find the individual who's committed the crime, sometimes they just send us their reports. And that's where the District Attorney's Office really gets involved. Now, here in Lincoln County, we have roughly 90 patrol officers or detectives who are responding to calls and who are interviewing and investigating crime. Every single one of those officers are writing reports and they're sending them to the District Attorney's Office for review. So we have a pretty large number of patrol officers and detectives here in Lincoln County. I can tell you that they are very robust on what they do. We get a lot of referrals, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But as you can see, we have a good number of individuals that are responding to crime, investigating, and then making determinations about whether or not there's a crime has been committed, and the case needs to be referred to the District Attorney's Office. Once the person is arrested or they believe that there's probable cause for a crime, the next stage in that process is the prosecution and pretrial services. So what this really looks at is we're looking at the cases in the District Attorney's Office. We're determining whether or not charges should be filed. If charges are filed, we are creating the charging documents. We are filing that with the court system. We are appearing at the initial arraignment where the defendant is advised of what charges they have been filed against them. Oftentimes we have a bail hearing regarding that, so we are advocating for whether or not the defendant should be released, whether or not they should have conditions if they are released, such as no alcohol, no contact with an alleged victim, things of that nature. Sometimes we're arguing for the person not to be released. If it's a violent felony or if we have concerns about community safety, we might be recommending to the court that the person stay in custody. We also then are presenting a case to the grand jury. If it's a felony charge, we here in Lincoln County, we present all of those cases to the grand jury for a decision about whether or not there's sufficient evidence to go forward. I can tell you year to date, we've presented a little over 500 cases to our grand jury here in Lincoln County on felony charges. We then are filing indictments, so if a grand jury true bills the charging instrument, it's called an indictment. We file that with the court. And then we're also appearing anytime that case is called at court. So there are routine status hearings. They typically happen on Mondays. We have them at 8:30, 10, 10:30, 11:30, 2, 3:30. I think, am I missing anything? I think I've hit them all. But we have status hearings every week on the majority of the cases that are active so that the court can check in and see where are we at in the process of resolving this. Is this something where we're going to enter it with a guilty plea, or is this something that needs to be set for trial? These are the types of cases that the district attorney's office handles. We handle every single crime that occurs in Lincoln County. In other counties, more larger counties, I would say, for example, Lane County, they have a few municipalities that actually have a municipal court. If you lived in other counties, you might have heard of that before. So, for example, in Eugene, if you end up getting a DUII, a driving under the influence of intoxicants in the city limits of Eugene, that might be referred to your local municipal court. That's not run through the district attorney's office. That would be run through different prosecutors, through a different court system. We don't have that here. So we prosecute every single crime that occurs within Lincoln County. From the person that steals a candy bar from the K's to homicide and anywhere in between, if some type of crime happens in Lincoln County, the Lincoln County District Attorney's Office is the only office that can prosecute that crime. There's no other secondary option for crime in Lincoln County. What this means, though, is that we have pretty high crime statistics or filing because we cover everything. There's not a municipality that can take some of the load off of us. Here are some criminal filing stats from 2025. These were current as of November 11th of 2025, and I received these from the Oregon Judicial Department. You can see on the left-hand side is us in comparison to a couple different counties. We're right there as the number two, not number two, but on the second on the hierarchy there. And you can see our population is roughly 50,000 here in Lincoln County. You can see us compared to Benton County, which is one of our neighbors. They have almost 100,000 population in that county. And you can see that we are very, very close in our criminal case filing statistics to a much larger county when you look at us compared side by side. So far, in 2025, and again, this was about a month ago, so I anticipate these numbers have increased, but we had filed roughly 1,200 misdemeanor cases that occurred here in Lincoln County in 2025. We filed roughly 400 felony cases for a total of a little over 1,600 criminal cases that have been filed by my office, by prosecutors within my office. You can see comparative in Benton County. We actually had filed more felonies than Benton County at the time of these statistics. And then if you look at us compared to Polk County, which has, you can see about 35,000 more residents in their county, we file a significant amount of additional cases here in Lincoln County. I think a lot of that is contributed to the fact that we are a big tourism area. I think everyone knows that, right? Newport, Lincoln City, Yachats, Waldport, Depot Bay. I mean, some of our, primarily along the Oregon coast, are very large tourism areas. We get a lot of influx of individuals coming in, coming to our casinos, coming to our events, coming to our eateries, things of that nature. And when we have such a high influx of population, that's not necessarily shown in just our resident population stats, the crime numbers are going to increase. I can tell you that a good portion of our driving under the influence of intoxicant cases are individuals who are not residents in our community. They're people who are here and traveling and visiting, as well as our domestic violence cases. Our domestic violence cases, although they do happen with residents in our community, but a good portion of them also are from people who are traveling and staying in our hotels and coming to events, and something happens, and then ultimately police get involved. So although relatively, as far as our population size, we are more comparable to much smaller counties. I don't think anyone would consider Lincoln County to be a large county comparable to Multnomah or anything like that. But our population alone does not accurately depict what our crime rates are, or how much crime is happening in our community. In comparison, in 2024, and these are Lincoln County statistics, we had only filed the whole year of 2024, we filed roughly 1,149 misdemeanor cases. So you can see we had almost a month and a half left in 2025, and we had already surpassed our misdemeanor numbers for 2024. The same with felony. In 2024, we filed a total of 341 felony cases. And again, with a month and a half left, we had already surpassed that number in 2025. months in the district attorney's office has looked like while we have experienced a staffing shortage. This graph on the left shows you what the amount of incoming in-custody cases or referred cases. So what that means is that when someone is arrested and taken to the Lincoln County Jail, that is a case that immediately essentially gets put on our desk. When they are in custody, that is a top priority. We have 24 hours essentially on a business day to review the case and determine whether or not charges should be filed or they're going to be released. So when we get an in-custody case, that's usually, we get them Monday mornings. We usually get them around 8 a.m. and they have to be filed by 10 a.m. that morning with the courts. And then the person is arraigned at 1:15 that day. So I can tell you right now, Monday mornings are extremely busy for us. Not only do we have several status dockets, an arraignment docket for citations, if you're given a citation out in the community and not arrested, but we also, on average, have anywhere between 10 to 20 in-custody cases from the weekend that we are having to assign out, review, and make charging decisions by 10 a.m. So you can see in the last 6 months, in July, we had 142 new cases sent to our office, whether they were in custody or whether or not the case was referred by law enforcement for our charging decision. In August, we had 193. In October, you can see we had a pretty big spike. We had 272 cases that we had to review for charges. In October, 188. November, 154. And in December so far, we still have a bit left, but we had 160 cases that were sent to our office and had to be reviewed by a deputy district attorney. This is a breakdown of how many cases each of my DDAs is getting in the last 6 months. So as you can see, DDA is me, obviously. Chief DDA is Mr. Michael Thornicroft. And then these DDA 3, 1, and 2, that's the designation of the individual. So we have 3 different levels in our office. So DDA 1, a Deputy District Attorney 1, is your entry-level position. So these are individuals who have little to no experience coming in. They are typically doing our misdemeanor docket and our very low-level felony caseload as well. DDA 2 would mean that they have a little bit more experience, that you have usually worked in an office for at least a year or 2 and have a little bit more experience in the entry-level position. And then a DDA 3 is the highest level. This is someone who has pretty significant experience as a lawyer or in the criminal justice system. So as you can see, I reviewed 37 cases in the last 6 months. Mr. Thornicroft reviewed 90 cases in the last 6 months. My DDA 3 in the office reviewed 86 cases, but where you see the numbers really are staggering is our entry-level individuals. And that's really because a good chunk of our crime, our misdemeanors, are not necessarily the significant assaults or homicides or large sex abuse cases. Those thankfully are not an overwhelming majority of our caseload. Our caseload really are the thefts, the DUIs, the assaults, domestic violence, things of that nature. And you can see that each one of them reviewed over 200 cases in the last 6 months. And that's not talking about what their active caseload looks like at the time, right? This is not in a vacuum. They don't have anything else, and the only thing they're doing is reviewing cases. They're also going to trial, appearing at status hearings, making plea offers, things of that nature. And then obviously the DDA 2 reviewed about 118 cases. I want to talk a little bit about Lincoln County Jail because that is a big piece of what we do, and they are one of our counterparts in this community. As far as bed space, the Lincoln County Jail has a total of 127 beds available for adults in custody or inmates. There's 103 male beds, and there are 24 female beds, and there are 14 beds that are reserved by parole and probation. So that means that parole and probation, if they have someone who's on probation and needs to be held or detained because of some type of probation violation, there's kind of specialized beds that are available to them through the jail if they need them. The average daily population in 2024 was 122. In 2025, year to date, the average population has been 135. And the cost per day to house an inmate is roughly $185 a day per inmate. So you can tell that those costs can be be extremely expensive depending on how many beds they're using. Currently, there are 11 inmates that are being held with no bail. So this would be your most violent offenders, as well as typically your homicide, anyone who's been charged with a homicide. There are 6 inmates currently charged with homicide that are currently in our Lincoln County Jail. The oldest offense date of those is from 2022. There are 88 inmates currently in custody right now that are awaiting trial, and there are 39 beds available for sanctions. What that means is that there are only 39 beds that are available for either probation violations or individuals who are serving some type of jail sentence. Forced releases. Unfortunately, as you can see, there's a maximum amount of beds in the jail, which means that if we're full, when one comes in, one has to go out. In 2025, there was 135 inmates that were released due to overcrowding. Now, this could have been someone who was supposed to be held pre-trial that ended up getting bumped because someone else came in that was a higher priority. But it also could have meant that someone was sentenced to 30 days jail and only served 2 of those days before being forced release and never served the entire sentence. Now, once you move through that portion of the process, we then move to the adjudication and sentencing portion. So this means trial, potentially a guilty plea, some type of negotiated sentence, a conviction, and then ultimately sentencing. As far as some jury trial statistics, I will be very honest with you, not every case goes to a trial. And honestly, I don't know if there's any office in America that has enough prosecutors that could try every case that is charged. That's just not a feasibility given the amount of cases that HDA's office is reviewing. So the majority of cases do end up resolving through some type of plea agreement. However, a good number of them do go to trial. And you can see these are our trial statistics. We are in the Lincoln County, obviously the orange one. But you can see us compared to some of our other local counties, I guess, and kind of how it's moved over the last couple of years. Now, I will say that 2020, 2021, if you recall, that was the COVID era, and that really did put a halt to a lot of jury trials. You can see Lincoln County had 7 that year. Polk County was close behind with 6, but Columbia County had 0, Benton County had 2, Clatsop had 1. I can tell you the majority of offices were not going to trial during COVID because of the extreme concern about bringing in a large number of people to pick a jury. There was just a lot of concerns about how to do that safely, and so that really did put a delay on trials until probably around 2022. You can see though in 2021, we had 26 trials here in Lincoln County, and these are felony trials. This does not include misdemeanor trials. You can see that in comparison, Benton County had 2 that year. In 2022, we had 14 trials. In 2023, we had 20 trials, and in 2024, we had 19 trials. Now, those numbers may not seem high compared to our filing statistics, but the number of, this is again, felony trials, if you average that out, I mean, that's more than 1 felony trial a month. And I can tell you that that's a lot. It's a lot with large caseload when you're trying to manage the caseload, and then you're also trying to manage a trial on top of that. And again, this is not including misdemeanor trials, which I would say is a larger portion of what the overall caseload looks like, as you saw from the statistics. This can be very burdensome on the system, but also on jurors who have to come in for multiple trials, as well as the individuals who are prepping for trial and witnesses coming in. The last kind of section of this criminal justice process is the correction, kind of the end period of it. And that includes treatment courts, probation, and prison. I wanted to talk a little bit about our treatment court programs here in Lincoln County because not only is the district attorney part of each of those programs, but I think that there's some of the really bright light that's coming out of the criminal justice system right now. Between January 1 and 2023 and December 15th of 2025, we had 3 treatment courts here in Lincoln County. We have a drug court that is handled by Judge Cheryl Bachler, who's our presiding judge here in Lincoln County. We have a mental health court, which is presided by Judge Marsha Buckley, and we have a family support court that is presided by Judge Amanda Benjamin. For drug court, since, again, January 1 of 2023, we've had 52 total graduates of that program. And I can tell you, that is not an easy program to graduate from. 62% graduation rate over the last, 2 years now, which is 10% higher than what the statewide graduation rate is for drug courts. There's drug courts usually all over the state of Oregon, and the Oregon Judicial Department keeps stats for all of them, and so we are 10% higher than what the average is statewide. We currently have 39 participants out of 50 spots, and there's a 12% recidivism rate since 2020. How they calculate that essentially is since 2020, they determine that if you graduated since 2020 and you have graduated for more than 1 year and you have not committed any new felony or misdemeanor charge, they count that as a success. And so what you can see is through the drug court system, they've only had 12% of the graduates who have committed new crimes since 2020, which is a really, really great statistic. As far as mental health court, we've had 16 total graduates. We have a 53% graduation rate, which is statewide, is 1% higher than statewide. We have 8 current participants out of 15 potential spots, and they have a 7% recidivism rate since 2020. Mental health court not only addresses individuals who have mental health diagnoses, but also individuals who are struggling with substance abuse issues as well. So they really do kind of have this dual diagnosis and are really getting treatment, kind of a holistic treatment, to really try to help the person with resources in our community and to hopefully, essentially, get them set back up on their feet where we're not seeing them back in the criminal justice system. Family support court is kind of an interesting treatment court. So family support court not only takes criminal cases, but it also takes DHS cases as well, so Department of Human Services. So when DHS gets involved and they take protective custody of a child, those parents could potentially end up in family support court without any criminal charges. But you could also have criminal charges and end up in family support court as well. So it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid. We've had 12 total graduates since January of 2023. We have a 57% graduation rate. Statewide is 29%. We currently have 14 participants out of the 15 allotted slots. And because of the fact that individuals end up there both because of criminal cases but also because of DHS cases, there's really not an active way to figure out the recidivism rate. But it's been a very successful program. And really the goal there is not only dealing with substance use issues, but also reunification of the family. That's one of the most important aspects of family support court, is getting either both parents or potentially one parent back in a place where they are not only clean, but they are stable, and they can be reunified with their children who are in the system. I wanted to talk about our budget for a little bit, and I'm not going to go in depth here, but I think there's a few interesting things that I think would be helpful for people to understand. Now, this is the 2025-2026 budget for the general fund specific for public safety. Public safety encompasses a couple different areas, but primarily it encompasses the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, as well as the District Attorney's Office, and youth ties is also one of the other big pieces, and community corrections, which is our parole and probation department. You can see from this graph that from the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, they are kind of broken up into different pieces of the pie, I guess. And so their patrol and investigations unit alone of the Sheriff's Office has a budget that's about $3.6 billion. So these are the individuals who are, you see, driving around in marked cars, who are responding to crime, things of that nature. The Lincoln County Sheriff's Office is also responsible for the Lincoln County Jail. The county jail's budget currently is about $8.4 million. And that's to not only house the individuals, but obviously staff the Lincoln County Jail as well, given the inmate population. The Sheriff's Office also has other divisions that through the budget that they're broken up into. You can see there there's Sheriff Support Services, that's about $1 million of the budget. There's a Sheriff's Office Administration, that's about $1.1 million to fund that. And then Jail Health and Services is about $1.49 million. You can see that they really, the Sheriff's Office takes up the majority of the public safety budget, which is understandable. I mean, I think we want public safety and we want our first responders to be robust. We then move up to kind of our area. You can see the District Attorney's Office, our budget for this cycle is about $3 million. And next to us, you can see Youth Ties. They are at $2.9 million. Now, a good comparison, Youth Ties really encompasses the Juvenile Probation Department as well as the Youth Ties Youth Shelter. Now, when you look at the District Attorney's Office, again, we have about a $3 million budget. We have 23 full-time employees under this specific budget. We have victim advocates and child support that are kind of separate and aren't included in this particular number. But you can see some of our responsibilities. We have criminal prosecution, civil commitments, public records appeals. We're a part of all three multidisciplinary teams. We do grand jury. We're part of the major crime team, so anytime there's a major crime in Lincoln County, we get called out as well. We're part of the crash team. If there's a fatal crash or a serious crash, we might get called out as well with law enforcement on that. We handle the deflection program, which is newer to Lincoln County but has been very successful in the last year. We handle child support enforcement internally. Not every office does that right now. There is a lot of district attorney's offices who have handed that those duties back to the state, back to the Department of Justice. We are one of the counties that has retained that, and one of the reasons for that is that I think it's really important to have a local home base where parents can go and have contact and try to get child support enforced in our county. I've had lengthy conversations with the individual who kind of runs the child support program here in Oregon, and it really is a benefit to have that in our office. If we didn't have it in our office, the closest child support office that individuals could go to would be in Albany, which obviously is not that difficult. I mean, it's not that far, but it is farther than coming down to Newport and being able to talk to someone face to face. The other important thing too is that we are really getting money back to kids in our community. I mean, that's the goal, right? Is to help enforce child support judgments, and that money is coming back to kids in our community. If we went to more of a district approach, which would be out of the Albany office, we wouldn't necessarily be having the money come back to our office. It would not our office, our people. They would be, and the reason why is that our office focuses on where the parent is that is supposed to be getting the child support, if that makes sense. So where are the kids, and where does the money need to go, which is focused on in Lincoln County. When you go to the district level, what ends up happening is they're focused on where the individual who isn't paying is located, if that makes sense. And so it's just a difference of whether the money is coming back to the kids in our community or whether or not they're focused on where the individual is who needs to be paying, if that makes sense. We also have crime victim services and rights. We also are involved in officer-involved shootings or use of force decisions. We oftentimes are involved in parole board hearings, as well as we're responsible for all expungements, Senate Bill 819 and 8 clemency applications. So even though criminal prosecution is by far probably the biggest and the most important thing that our office does, we have several other duties that are required statutorily, but also I think just required for community safety purposes as well. In comparison, Youth Ties has a budget of $2.9 million. They have about 20.3 full-time employees, and they're responsible for the youth shelter, juvenile probation, and juvenile expungements. So you can see our budget compared to them is relatively close in number. However, the amount of services that we provide the community is much greater, at least in list, than it is for Youth Ties. I can tell you the Juvenile Probation Department consists of 3 full-time employees. I believe the rest of the full-time employees are related to the shelter, which The other interesting thing is, I think, to compare us to the other legal departments in the county. Obviously, you know the district attorney's office does employ attorneys, lawyers, right? Those are our deputy district attorneys. The other office in our county that has a legal team is the county council office, which is part of the county administration. You can see that our budget again was around $3 million for this calendar year. I anticipate we're going to come in under budget due to several vacancies. And we have about 23.3 full-time employees. In comparison, the other legal department within our county is county counsel's office. They have a budget of $1.1 million, and they only have 4 full-time employees. So you can see kind of the comparisons between the two legal departments, or departments that employ attorneys here in Lincoln County. Now, we do have some current staffing concerns. As you know, we have had several vacancies, and we've had them for almost a year now for some people. And this has caused an increased caseload. We have over 390 cases that are pending review that we just have not been able to get to, and our backlog is growing because we just don't have the people to look at them. Low morale in the office. A lot of individuals are feeling, I think, the burden of having increased caseloads and not being able to give the time and attention that's maybe needed on each case because they have another case that needs the time and attention as well. I can tell you that there's more lenient resolutions when we have high caseloads and not enough staffing, because we have to resolve cases. And sometimes the only way to resolve cases is to offer something less than maybe what is deserved. There's less accountability for individuals, whether that be through more lenient sentences or through not being able to file cases because we just don't have the staffing to do it. Again, less cases filed. There's less ability to train. I can tell you, for a county of our size, I think both Michael and I have a much larger caseload than is typical for other counties of our size. We've taken on as much as we can, but we're also taking on much larger cases as well. So like we mentioned, there's 6 pending homicides. All those cases are assigned to me, but I also do all the child sex abuse cases, as well as adult sexual abuse cases, and some really high-level domestic violence assaults as well. And so what that means is Michael handles all of our manslaughter cases, our criminal negligent homicide cases, our high-level assault, robbery, things of that nature. But what that means is that we are not as free to help train the other individuals in our offices because we are carrying such a part of the caseload as well. So that does impact the training aspect of our office as well. We do see more crime, I think. I think that there's this idea that when individuals get booked into the jail and no charges are filed because we don't have the staffing to do it, that there's really no accountability, and then unfortunately we see that person back time and time again because there's no consequences for what happened. There's a lot of burnout that happens when we're so short-staffed, but we have such high caseloads as well. And I think that we've seen that kind of over the last couple of years, where we've had individuals who could go to a different county, make more money with a lower caseload or a less caseload, and they take that opportunity. And it's hard to compete with that, right? It's hard to compete with more money and less work. And those are the struggles that we're having in Lincoln County right now. And that high turnover. Thankfully, since I've been elected, we've only had one prosecutor leave, and he ended up moving back home, had some family health issues that he needed to tend to. And so thankfully, we haven't experienced a lot of turnover in the last year, but the hard part was that when he ended up leaving this last fall, the county froze his position as well. So we've been unable to even fill the positions that we had filled prior to the freeze. This is our current org chart, our organizational chart. You can see that I am up there as the elected district attorney. I answer only to you, the citizens of Lincoln County. You have elected me, you voted me into this position, and there's no one else that I answer to other than you. You can see that the way the office is broken up into is that there's really, from me, it stems into 3 management positions. One of those is Chief Deputy District to have an administrative chief that essentially is the office manager of the office, but also supervises all of our support staff. And then I'm also supposed to have an executive chief. That individual is supposed to not only handle public records requests, be the public information officer, but also supervise our victim advocates, our child support enforcement, and our deflection coordinator. Prior to that position being vacant, that individual was actually trained as a victim advocate and in child support, and very often routinely stepped in and stood in those two roles when needed. As you can see, we have several vacancies right now. Two of the management positions have been vacant, one of them since January, the other since July. We have our digital forensic analyst position that has been vacant for about 2 years, maybe a little bit longer. Our detective position has been vacant for almost a year now. We have 3 deputy district attorney positions that are vacant. One of them is actually grant funded through the community justice department. So our probation department is supposed to be funding that. That's a grant funding from the state. And that position was actually frozen up until about a month ago. And then we have 2 victim advocate, part-time advocate positions that have been frozen as well. I have asked for, as you probably are aware by now, I have asked for public safety exceptions to the freeze for 4 of those positions. 2 of them in 2 deputy district attorney positions, the detective position, and then the executive chief position. It's been very, very difficult to manage the office without 2 of my primary managers in it. And so I've made repeated requests for exceptions to those positions, recognizing that maybe I'm not entitled to every position being filled, but if we could maybe meet in the middle, compromise somehow, and really get the positions that are most important to public safety and to getting our office to run how it should be ran. Unfortunately, all of those requests have been denied, and the only individual who will speak to me about them is Commissioner Miller. I've reached out and tried to get on Board of Commissioners agendas about it, but it has not happened so far. And why this is really important is I've put in the red boxes. The district attorney's office is really kind of the middleman between law enforcement and the probation department and the Department of Corrections, right? Without the district attorney's office, there's no prosecution of crime. You could have every law enforcement officer out on the street responding to crime, referring reports, but if you don't adequately staff your district attorney's office, nothing's happening with those individuals. The same thing, if we're not charging cases, people aren't going on probation, and you don't need probation officers, right? You don't need prisons if you don't have the district attorney's office as the middleman, as the individual who's reviewing cases, who's making charging decisions, who's resolving cases, who's going to trial, and who's getting accountability and justice for the victims in our community. And that is why it's so important that we adequately provide resources and adequately staff our district attorney's office. And I want to be very clear, I have not once asked for more money. That has never been a request of mine. What I am asking is, through the budget process, positions were approved, a budget was approved, and all I'm asking is to be able to use part of those resources to fill the positions that are necessary and important for public safety, to keep this whole process moving smoothly, to keep the fact that law enforcement can go out, investigate crime, arrest individuals, and that we will have the staffing to hold people accountable, to review cases, to make charging decisions, to go to trial, and to ultimately find justice through this system. Without immediate exceptions to the current hiring freeze, I'll be very honest with you, we will not be able to keep up with the demand. We are already at a place where we have not filed some cases at this point. I would say roughly 30 cases at this point, because we just don't have the staffing to do it. The demand is so high, and we just don't have the time, the resources, or the people to review every single case that's coming in with our current staffing shortage. And if there's not some type of change quickly, we are going to have to make decisions on what cases we're prioritizing and which cases are not going to be filed by the district attorney's office. And I hope we don't get to that. Michael probably shares my passion as well. I think we became prosecutors for a reason because we truly believe in the system. We believe that there should be justice and accountability, that victims should be heard, but that there also should be rehabilitation through the system as well for certain individuals. And I think that what we love most about our job is the criminal prosecution aspect of it. But at some point, I have to look at my office and Michael has to look at our people, and we have to decide whether or not we can continue to overburden them and to bog them down and to ask so much of them to the point where they're getting burnt out, where they're struggling to get through, their caseload, and we have to make decisions on what's best for our people in our office. And until we can fully staff our DDAs, especially our deputy district attorneys, until we're able to get some more people in the door to help cover the burden of our increasing caseload, it's going to potentially mean that we can't file every case. And I hope it doesn't come to that. But that's unfortunately where we might end up. And that is all I have as far as a presentation. I went a little bit longer, so I apologize about that. But we do want to open it up to questions. And I'm going to have Kira Morgan come up and be our moderator. And as Commissioner Miller, as you all know, I invited all of the commissioners to attend. I thought it was really important that we have commissioner representation, especially given the fact that currently, when my exception requests have been denied by someone, I'm assuming the Board of Commissioners, and so I invited all three of the commissioners. Obviously, Commissioner Miller accepted the invitation, and we're very thankful that he came. I invited Commissioner Walter Chuck at the Board of Commissioner meeting this past Wednesday. He had indicated that he would come if he had time. I don't see him here today, so unfortunately it sounds like he did not have time. And I emailed Commissioner Hall twice, but did not hear anything back. So I think that this is the three of us, I guess. Okay.
So maybe one of the things that Michael Thornicroft, so I started in the office in 2017. I grew up in Tolman County. My dad was a builder. Went to Westmont High School. And started as a prosecutor early on in my legal career and then got away from it for a while. I was an investigator for the Oregon Government Ethics Commission for about 3 years before I saw that there was an opening here in the district attorney's office. Michelle Brandon was the DA at the time. That was in 2017. I came on board. Loved it here, but Marion County had a position in their DA's office for $85,000 more a year. And so I went to Marion County for a couple of years. Loved it, but then I really missed home. And when I saw Jenna got elected, I'm like, all right, I'm taking a big bet. I'm coming back home. One of the things that Jenna pointed out, I really need to stress it, is we do not have municipal courts here. So the numbers that Jenna was showing with those other counties, those counties' numbers would be through the roof. As the chief deputy DA, I reached out to other chiefs in Polk. They have city courts. So those city courts, like Jenna said, are taking the DUIs, they're taking the disorderly conduct, they're taking just the lower level misdemeanor cases that those DA's offices never see unless there's usually a felony associated with them or it's ongoing behavior. So our numbers are absorbing what a city court should be absorbing, where those other DA's offices don't have that luxury. So I definitely just wanted to point that out about those numbers.
And before Kira takes over, I did just want to address one thing. I know that there had been some comments, I believe on Facebook, that somehow this presentation was going to be about the current recall that's happening. This was not my intent. As you can see in my presentation, I didn't mention the word recall one time. What I think is really important is that people understand not only what the district attorney's office does, but the current challenges that the district attorney office has right now because of the hiring freeze. I don't think it's a shock to anyone that I've been very vocal about how the hiring freeze has affected my office. I've made those comments, I believe, well before the recall signatures even started happening. So this does not have anything to do with the recall. What I want is for you to have information to help make you understand or help, I guess, maybe answer any questions that you might have about why I've been so vocal, about why I need exceptions to the freeze right now because of the impact that it's having in my office. And so because of that, what I don't want this to become is this question and answer about the recall. I don't have any role in the recall. And so what we are going to limit is any questions about the recall. I don't know if that's really applicable to the point of this town hall. And so just kind of as an overview, we just want to avoid that topic because again, that's not why I'm here to speak.
Thank you, Jenna. All right, our first question is, who in the county is not allowing these positions to be filled? Why are other county departments being allowed to hire?
Sorry.
So, first, thank you for being here, Jenna. Good job. Social media is a good tool, but we all know that it can go sideways too, right? And being here together and talking about things together as a community is super, super important. So the fact that you're here matters. The fact that she is doing a town hall matters. But in answering this question, yeah, it's been a while since Jenna and I have had a seat at the table. And where is that table? Be a couple of places in regard to things like hiring freezes. It's either one commissioners meeting or budget committee meetings. The simple thing is we are not getting a seat at the table to have those types of discussions. Decisions around these freezes have been pulled inside and are being made as administrative decisions. Okay, so when the freeze first began, when this started coming down the pipeline to me as a county commissioner, I said, let's have a work session. Let's bring this into the commissioners meeting. Let's bring this into the budget committee meeting. And those requests are denied. Okay, so as a result of how these decisions have been made inside administratively, I complained to the county. I said, this isn't right. These need to be made in a public forum appropriately. I was told, no, you're wrong. And I said, I disagree. And I complained to the Government Ethics Commission. And we're still in the process of OGEC, Oregon Government Ethics Commission, investigating that how we are making these decisions is appropriately done. I think it's just simple. Just bring it into the county commissioner meeting. Bring it into a budget committee meeting so we can all be at the table together. And it's more than just about the DA's office. It's how all of the county works together as a coordinated whole financially, right? And the fact that the entire management team, department heads and elected officials can come together and work through those decisions is really, really key. And we're just not seeing that in a transparent way.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Our next question is, why are you having an issue getting on VOC agenda? And what is the reasoning they give you?
So I think Commissioner Miller probably has tried more times than I have to get on the agenda. And I will let you speak to this too, but my understanding is that the agenda is decided by County Council Buell in conjunction with the chair. And so essentially, as you can make as many requests as you want, but if it's not granted by the two individuals who are responsible for the agenda, it's not getting on the agenda. I don't know if you want to speak more to that though.
Yeah, basically, once again, primarily living with county council and the chair, one of my agenda requests has been to discuss agenda requests. Let's make a policy and a procedure together about how that process works. So again, everybody can have a seat at the table. And I can't get into the meeting to discuss it, right? You just start seeing it yourselves. Or my seat.
I don't know if there is recourse under the current administration, to be honest.
I think it's really a construct of any jurisdictions, what they'll call board rules. right? So there's no, OGEC, when I asked them, is there no mechanism that ensures that I, as an elected official, especially as a commissioner, can activate dialogue in my own county commissioner meeting? And, OGEC's executive director said, no, there's no real statute for that. It lives within the board rules of your jurisdiction. So I requested that. Let's talk about that, right? Let's make those rules so everybody understands what are the rules of engagement. And we need to do it. And we just are resisting this transparent process.
So who is the rule? The person that she said, who is that person?
County
County's
council.
legal counsel.
Yeah,
And
county
how did
attorney.
she get her job?
She answers only to the board of commissioners.
So the board of commissioners hired her?
Yeah, the council serves at the will of the board. Nobody else oversees council.
And I think what, kind of backing on Casey, I think what I think is important for you to understand is what you see is me issuing press releases and me taking my 3 minutes at the board of commissioners meetings. And I want to make it very clear, I have attempted repeatedly to have these conversations within the county, and I know Commissioner Miller has as well. It is not as if our first reaction when something doesn't go our way is to publicly come out about it. My struggle has been is that when I've asked for clarification, when I've asked for understanding, when I've asked to meet with someone to explain to me why my exceptions are not getting approved and why other people's are, no one responds to my emails. I mean, that's where I'm at in life right now. Is it's not as even if they give me an explanation by email and it just doesn't make sense. I just get crickets.
Yeah,
And-
yeah. The fact that she's having to show up for 3 minutes in public input is already an example of dysfunction, right? It's not a high-functioning team when your DA has to show up for 3 minutes, right? So the fact that she's already been relegated to that extent is problematic.
And that is the only way that I can get face-to-face time with Commissioner Chuck and Commissioner Hall. They will not meet with me other than if I show up at the meeting. That's the only time they will listen to my voice.
I'd like to ask Michael if this is an ethics situation because it's about the agenda. And so would the Board of Ethics take that on as a complaint?
So having spent several years at the Ethics Commission before coming here, and I see what goes on a daily basis, and Mr. Miller is doing everything he can. I mean, even, Casey brought it upon, you brought it upon yourself and included you in it, right? In terms of, so Casey was willing to take a bullet, and say, hey, look, we're all, we need to fix this. And unfortunately, the thing about the Oregon revised statutes that the Oregon Government Ethics Commission has to operate under, they don't have a lot of teeth. There's fines and stuff like that, but there's like Mr.
That is this finable? That's the word.
There's definitely problematic areas, and the fact that the commission is moving forward, unanimously moving forward with a full investigation. Yes.
Will the result of that investigation become public?
Oh, yes, definitely will. Yes.
We haven't taken it.
Well, it's two ethics commission complaints that revolve around these public meeting concerns. One is in process, I think it's 180 days, so we're probably 60.
So it starts out with what's called a preliminary investigation. And a complaint comes in, is assigned to a private investigator, like I would get one assigned to me. And you have a strict timeline to get that preliminary investigation done to present before the Board of Commissioners for the Ethics Commission. They come from all walks of life, appointed by various political groups. You try to get it balanced. You pull them from Republicans, Democrats, Independents. And then you present that preliminary review to the Ethics Commission in their meeting. And you say, here's what I have, or I've interviewed both sides. It sure looks like, or it doesn't look like, that there should move forward with a full investigation, and that's what Commissioner Miller is talking about. Then that triggers the 180-day rule. Now, there are some exceptions on the statute that you can get an extension on that, but for the most part, I think they say they're all pretty tight window, but, you know, a lot of it, there will be follow-up, of course, and investigators, and both sides get, obviously, get to respond.
One more question. When they have their full report after 180 days, will they have to come and use the 3 minutes of public comment? Or will they actually be permitted to publicly discuss this?
Yeah, well, I think it's a discussion we all need to have openly, and I hope so. We can only request that kind of transparency.
It'll definitely be posted, and the Ethics Commission will post it online. It will be available for everyone. Now, whether it's discussed at the DOC meeting or not, you know, that's their prerogative, but it will be available for everyone.
Do you happen to know what day we're on?
It's been a long year, yeah. Let's see. I think we're about 60 in. I'm not sure, but yeah, it feels like a long time.
All right, our next question is, how is this event being paid for, such as the room rent?
The room rent was paid for by the DA's office budget.
And this next question is, why didn't your staff acknowledge my call regarding, quote, due process regarding the city manager demanded I pay $400 in a letter or he would turn off my water?
I'm assuming that's related to a, can I read it one more time?
Yeah.
County doesn't have any water, municipal water.
But this is regarding Walport.
So what I would say is that, and this is not a good excuse by any means, but due to our staffing shortages, our office doesn't run as smoothly as it used to be quite honest, especially without our executive chief and our administrative chief. I can tell you that the executive chief was really responsible for calling citizens back and responding to calls, responding to emails, responding to public information requests, things of those nature. And the individual that was in that position has not been there since January. So we've really been putting a Band-Aid on a lot of the day-to-day functions of the office. And that is not a good excuse. That should not happen. But unfortunately, that sometimes means that things slip through the cracks. And so if this is one of those things, please come talk to me afterwards. I'm more than happy to address or at least try to figure out how I can best address this. Sometimes there are things that are outside of my control, even as the district attorney. And I would say that if you believe a crime has been committed, your best initial course of recourse is to call the police and make a report. I can't investigate crimes myself. That's why we get referrals from our local law enforcement agencies, and we actually accept referrals from any law enforcement agency. So if you believe a crime has been committed, your first step would be to contact law enforcement. But if you believe that there's some type of other remedy that is within the district attorney's office's realm, I'm more than happy to discuss this with you afterwards. And I apologize if your email or your call did not get responded to.
What steps are the county taking to match the city's stance against ICE in this county?
Yeah. I requested last week that we at least have a preliminary discussion about what might we do if an ICE facility was to open in unincorporated Lincoln County. And remember, the county has jurisdiction of the areas outside city limits. I was at the city of Walport's meeting when they passed a resolution. But, you know, the thing to remember is what a county can do in regard to the federal government coming in is possibly symbolic on a lot of levels, like where a resolution says we're, you know, against such things, for example, like Walport did. But what real mechanisms the county has from a legal perspective is really something that needs to be talked about, because, you know, in the same example of where the county prohibited aerial that spring, and the state came back and said no. You know, you're preempted. You can't have that kind of local authority. There's a lot of legal ramifications there, but I think the board can at least have a discussion about it, and that would be a good place to begin.
I actually get asked a lot about this from the community, and Jenna and I talked about it. I had yet to, and none of the prosecutors that work under us, we have yet to receive a phone call from the feds or ICE. As a matter of fact, our county and the state of Oregon, you know, it's a blue state. It is a sanctuary state for Oregon, and we don't cooperate in any way. We don't get phone calls asking for their cooperation. Our cases, you know, continue as normal. Now, I know sometimes defense attorneys, if they have someone that their, you know, immigration status might be in jeopardy with conviction, I know sometimes that is brought up, but that is dealt with far outside our county. But it's the policy of our county that I think anytime we get a request from ICE that needs to be a warrant, I think we're supposed to forward it on. But it hasn't happened.
Yeah. To be clear, I have
Who in the county, if anyone, has been reaching out trying to get answers?
I am not aware. Again, what was that again, sir?
Who with the county, if anyone, has been reaching out to the federal government trying to get answers?
Well, it would certainly be our legal counsel would be one, subject matter expert, but of course the board too, right? And I would say if anybody has questions about that, direct them to the commission. But also that, just to be clear, I have heard no intel of anything about ICE and unincorporated Lincoln County. Of course, we know in the cities that's been a little bit different. But also what's really important is that we, try to understand what might be rumor, what might be facts. And again, I am not aware of anything in unincorporated Lincoln County.
Well, when I first started at the DA's office in '07, I did all probation cases, and I can tell you that I would get a phone call from the probation department, and they would say, you need to have the DA file something on it because ICE is taking this case. They never asked permission. That's just how it happened. And so all of that happened through their probation department, and they would just take the person to deport them. So, I mean, they've been around. That went away. I mean, that only happened the first 2 years I worked there, and then I didn't hear about them anymore.
For those of you who know about Debbie Howard, our senior legal assistant, she and I have been working together for years.
I begged them to come back.
But yeah,
So what you're doing is, so I heard you say earlier that you're putting together a budget. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're putting together a budget. Budget gets passed, and then we keep falling under the budget, but we can't get assistance in that department.
Correct.
Is that true?
Yes,
So where's the money go when we fall under the budget year after year, but we're still short-staffed,
They couldn't tell us.
and then criminals go out on the street?
Yeah.
it's a great
That's
question.
the type of questions I've been asking.
Yeah. I've asked them as
Okay.
well.
And then lastly, I seen your chart, which I've never seen that before, but I was told that some of the jail space had gotten moved to a gym or a rec thing, and now we cut down on the beds. Is that true?
I have not heard that.
Yeah, okay,
No.
all right.
Yeah, I know that, obviously you saw the bed space is, I think it was 127, but their average, yearly average right now is around 135. So there are times I think where two people end up, sharing. That's what I would imagine. Because they don't have 135 beds, but I've not heard anything like that as in they're kind of doing a makeshift area. I've not heard that.
So with all this, where would you want the public to go? So it seems like I'm handcuffed in jail right now, trying to help my community. I'm trying to help, and I'm thinking that everyone here is that way. But what would your advice be? Where do we go now? What do we do? As a community of Lincoln County.
I think that the only people who can change the current predicament that we're in is the community, right? I think that I have voiced my concerns, I know Casey has voiced his concerns, and what I have accepted is that I, as the elected district attorney, do not have the power to fix this. I can advocate for my office, I can inform the community about what's going on, but until the community, I think, understands what the issues are and chooses to, I guess, change the direction of the county, I don't know if there's anything more that I can do with the, I guess, the elected authority that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I would say support us in asking for simultaneous transparency, right? These are discussions that involve your money, the community's money, and a high-functioning commission should be having these discussions in its commissioner meeting, right? Like, this is nuts and bolts stuff, okay? So please support us and say, we want this to.
phone number for us or email?
Well, I left my cards over there.
Where can we respond?
Yeah, one of the key things that you can do is provide public comments, okay, to the boards. There is an email, boc@co.lincoln.or.us, and that is a key, centralized email that is distributed to the commissioners and put on each agenda. So that is an entry point. But I encourage you to, take it from every angle, because it needs your help.
And we can appear online, right, at DOC meetings now, which, for folks that can't make it there, we can appear via video, and then we can put that email up on the board there. And then, of course, appear in person, that's great.
Michael, yeah, there one.
Yeah, so I heard you say earlier on when you were talking that decisions are being made in the background and coming to the board of commissioners meetings are made. Isn't that illegal?
Yeah, this is a process where decisions are made sequentially or behind the scenes. OGBC calls a serial meeting. But in general, public records and meeting laws require that your elected officials make deliberations and decisions in the public meeting.
Not only that, Casey, but you only have 3 commissioners.
Right.
So if you have 2 commissioners meeting somewhere to discuss things, that's an illegal meeting in itself. You have to have that posted that you're going to have a meeting, and you all have to be invited.
That's right.
Well, they have meetings and people don't even want to answer questions in front of everybody, so that's a problem too.
I understand, I absolutely get that. The frustration for me is that I voted for you. You're our person. We need to hear from you. 3 minutes. You have to go as a regular public citizen and speak to our county commissioners for 3 minutes. That's absolutely inappropriate. I mean, she's right. It's our job to fix this.
Right. We have to stand up.
You watch some of these meetings, and it's kind of heartbreaking to watch. There's just numerous times Commissioner Miller wants to talk about something that people are bringing up, appearing, and he gets shut down. And, it's just the disrespect being shown to an elected official. It's
Public comment is not a time for discussion. I mean, Robert's rules have it pretty clear, commission's rules are pretty clear. That's, you're hamstrung at that time. Well, you're only hamstrung at that time because there is a piece of conversation to be had if they're put on the agenda. But the refusal to put them on the agenda means there's no conversation. I agree, I'm just pointing out fact. Public comment is exactly that. It's the opportunity for public to speak. It is not the opportunity for the board to enter into dialogue.
Well,
That's
not
what-
necessarily. That's
I'm
not
not-
set in stone somewhere, sir, okay? It can be as reflexive as it needs to be. Okay? I think that was a matter
So
of
the
opinion.
rules should be discussed up front, or at least publicized, of how public comment is handled. That's my point.
Yeah, we need to completely relook at our
They
public
keep
comments.
changing it to fit their narrative is the problem. Because they do have the rules of Robert's Rules of Order, which they don't follow. So as chair, you are not allowed to second a motion or vote unless there's a tie. That's why we always have an odd amount of commissioners, 3, 5, that's how it works. And so that's why I try to speak at public meeting, we don't take control back of our county, this is what we're gonna get spoon-fed, what they want to give us. I want my DA to run our county in a safe way. I want our voted commissioner to have a voice. I want you guys to do the right thing, go to some meetings, and stand up for these people that we voted into office.
Yes,
I've got a question. On the ethics results, okay, if Commissioner Chuck and Commissioner Hall were taking over,
Yeah, and what I hope we see down the line is future iterations, rule changing happen in 24, Oregon Government Ethics Commission, got jurisdiction. What I see them doing month after month as they meet is I think they're really working through their own recent rulemaking. And my sense is others are having these challenges. And I hope we see stronger rules that protects all elected officials moving forward. I mean, we within our own organization as county government can widen the board rules to include all elected officials. I think we certainly need to do that. But at the state level, that there's some more urgency or stronger rulemaking that ensure me or a future young person who runs for office is really going to be able to represent their community, and the board structure itself is really critical.
I have a question, that Julie person, what's her job? I mean, isn't she supposed to kind of like help the people get communication to the VOC too, or is she just for the VOC is what I'm asking?
Well, I mean, she has a job description, every legal counsel, and she is our lead counsel and assistant counsel have job descriptions, but, primarily to provide legal advice to the board, okay?
So is she giving, do you hear the legal advice she gives to them? I mean, since they're not participating in the right way that they should be?
Yeah.
And so what is, can I ask you what your comment is on her legal advice to you guys?
I want the best legal advice I can get, and then I want the board to go with that advice and operate. I don't appreciate sometimes the conversation being directed outside just legal advice. Okay?
So something has to be done there too.
It really bothers me that during public comment, you get cut off, even to the point that the mic is shut off, the lights are turned off, and people leave the room.
Yeah.
I am wondering if there is a place somewhere in writing that says that Casey Miller is a citizen and has a right to speak at public comment. Do you know what I mean? Like, where is it? Like, you are a citizen of this county. Why is that okay for them to like cut the mic off? I don't.
So you mean if I showed up for public comment, would they also shut the lights off?
Well,
I mean,
It's kind of like.
I know, and it's just kind of silly to even have to entertain that might be a way that I get a voice on my own board, but believe it or not, I've thought about it.
But how did you get here? How did you get to this position? This is ridiculous.
It's the leadership of the commission, right? I mean,
And
really
what
it
people
comes
are
down to
doing to
that.
see this, and that's why we need to all go there and just overfill that until it's outside, so people get the gist that we the people have a voice and this is what we want.
Well, we have 3 county commissioners, and, in the big picture, they are responsible for everything. So,
I think I will open it up at the end, but I do think we have a couple questions left that we're written, so let's get through those, and then I will open it up at the end in case there's any additional questions.
Would like to ask a question about access to public records, something that was first requested on December 19th of 2024.
Yes, so,
$35,000 request.
yeah, so, public records requests, appeals, go to the district attorney's office if it's one of our local municipalities, essentially. It is a part of the job that I would say is very complex because it's not related to criminal prosecution. It's really more of a civil conversations with other elected district attorneys, and specifically Multnomah County's district attorney's office has a very robust public records appeal kind of grouping because they're so big and they get so many requests. And I'm in a very weird spot in the appeal process because yes, they get appealed to me. So if you requested the city of Depot Bay and you wanted every check they've ever written for the past 2 years, right? They would either grant you the request, give you over the documents. They would send you something that says, we can do this, but it's going to cost you $40,000 of our time to do. So pay up and then we'll do it. Or they'll deny. If they tell you that it's going to cost a certain amount, you can appeal that amount to me, to my office. If they deny your request and you believe that that denial was wrong, you can appeal that request or that denial to my office. What's difficult though is that I don't have the power I think everyone would anticipate I have, right? When you appeal to the court, the Supreme Court, or you appeal to the Court of Appeals, right, they have actual authority. What I really can do is I can tell them you have to give the records over, but if they don't, there's not a lot of teeth that I have. I can lower the fee. I could do something like that. Whether they follow that, I don't know. But I'm not a court of law. I don't have the same abilities that you would see with a judge type situation. The other problem that I've had with public records appeals is that again, my executive chief handles all of those, and I haven't had her since January. And again, not a good excuse, but those staffing shortages in my office truly do affect not just our ability to file charges and go to trial and things like that, but it affects all the other little things that my office does that you as a community, expect us to do. And so again, I've found that I don't have a lot of teeth in that process. I can obviously order people to do things in that appeal process. Whether they listen or not is really up to them, which doesn't make a lot of legal sense to me, but that's how it is. But again, it's just one of the things that has kind of gone to the back burner because we're so short-staffed. And again, that's not a good excuse. It's just the reality of the situation that I'm in right now.
Since the request is a year old, the city of Walport asking for $35,000 for minor reports.
Yeah.
How long will it be before we actually get a letter from your office?
Well, I have 2 weeks of downtime with the holidays, so we have a pretty light court docket this next week and the following week because of the holidays. So I will get you something by the end of the year.
Thank you. This is the last one, and then we will open it up if you have any additional questions based on the conversation. We just ask that you raise your hand, nice and high, so we can see you and we can follow you. This final question, how many cases were handled by the DA's office in 2024? Of those cases, how many were resolved by plea bargain? How many went to trial? How many are not resolved? Of the cases that went to trial, how many are acquitted?
I don't know if I have all those stats off the top of my head. I do think that the presentation covered some of those statistics, and so if you would like a copy of the presentation or a copy of those statistics, please just grab me afterwards and I will make sure to get your contact information and get that sent over to you. As you can see, the number of cases that go to trial are a very small percentage of the overall amount of cases that are charged. I would say that typically we are successful at trial. Obviously that we do get not guilty verdicts, and I think that is absolutely part of the justice process. I know as a new DDA, and as I've become more experienced and things like that, there's something that we always talk about in the prosecution realm. Essentially, if you're going to trial and you're winning on every single case, that means that you're not filing the hard cases, right? You're not filing, you're really cherry picking the cases in which you file. And that is not necessarily my philosophy. I absolutely think that there needs to be evidence to support us charging a case. I think we should really believe that we should be able to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. But I think that there are sometimes hard cases that the evidence supports charging, that sometimes we go to trial and ultimately there isn't enough evidence according to the jury. And I think that's okay. I think that's how the system is meant to work, is ultimately it's not my decision to convict someone, it's the jury's decision, it's our community's decision. As far as the other stats, again, I will, if this individual comes up and gives me some contact information, I can pull those stats and I can send them to you. I just don't know them off the top of my head. But hopefully the presentation provided some of those statistics. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things with the shortage is, and the workload, it's great when you have that additional time. As a point, I'm a very big believer in specialty courts, and in our line of work, there are people that need second chances and third chances. It's unfortunate. They're salvageable. There can be a light at the end of the tunnel for folks. And treatment courts are very effective. But that requires extra time out of my day to meet with the defense attorney. I like to meet with the defendant. If there's a victim in the case, consult the victim. And one of the things that we can do with these treatment courts is called a departure sentence. We take the Oregon sentencing guidelines, and let's say this person, if we just send them to, if we go to trial, we convict them, and we send them to prison, and we go to prison for 20 months, and they get out and they're on post-prison supervision. That's the sanction we give. But if we can get them into a specialty court, and we have, rather than 20 months, let's say we do 30 months hanging above their head, and we mandate that they go away to drug and alcohol treatment, and they stay there, not for 2 weeks, not for a month, but let's say, 3 months, 4 months. And if we can do that, and if we can spend the time and evaluate those cases, I've seen so many success stories with the longer a person stays in treatment. Liberal side of the prosecutor talking, but the longer you can keep someone in treatment, the better opportunity there is for long-term sobriety and being a functioning member of society. But I need that extra time to look through all my cases and find those individuals that, yes, that would work for. Here's someone, we can save to be able to have greater victim contact. And that was one of the things that I enjoyed in Marion County is the victims in my cases, they had my work phone number and I kept in contact with them. Here, it's just so difficult. As Jenna pointed out, we're short-staffed in our victims department. And what our victims advocates do, you're a victim of a crime, right when that case is charged, when it comes into our office, a victim advocate reaches out to you. You have a first name in the DA's office that you can call, you can talk to. They help you with paperwork or restitution. They let you know when the court dates are. We're struggling with that right now. And so when we don't have, and Sharon Pinninger, you can definitely talk to that. When we have just 2 victims advocates, and we're supposed to have how many? 5. So all of those numbers, all of those cases, there's a victim attached to those cases, most 9 times out of 10. And so as a result, you're feeling like you're left out of the system because we don't have the people to call you to let you know what's happening. So it's just...
Sharon?
Can I speak to that for just a moment? I recently shared a video about my experience in the last 16 months with the district attorney's office. I was a victim in 2 separate crimes, and they were simultaneous. Because of short staffing, Michael Thornicroft took over for Jenna a couple of those. And he was also part of the prosecution for the other crimes. So there were times where I was seeing Michael 2 times a week with 2 separate cases. To say that this does not affect victims is absolutely incorrect. As far as the administration, I'm sorry, I don't know that particular job.
Executive chief.
Thank you. I was in direct contact with this individual when she was abruptly removed, and that directly affected me. I was supposed to be in trial the following week. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. I wasn't aware I was on social media for the entire day. I had no idea what was happening in the DAs, other than paperwork wasn't getting filed, wasn't getting phone calls back.
changes with, people even losing District Attorney Wallace, just days before our trial, our second trial was set for our dog murder case. That is, I cannot express to you enough what that would feel like to work with someone at that time for 15 months and then lose her just days before your trial was set and have to meet your new district attorney that you've never met before, you've never had any communication for, and hope that he has put all that effort and care into your case that your current attorney had put in for over a year. So this affects victims the way that it impacts victims. I cannot, like I mentioned, I cannot overstate how much more stress this is for not just one trial, but for two. And because I've heard my story be taken so out of context, this to me is not a reflection of the DA's office as the DA responsibility. This is no different than if you put kids in a classroom, you double the kids you're going to have. You put a teacher, you strip her of all of her assistants, you keep the building, but you take all the desks away, and then you blame the teacher for not having a positive outcome. It's a system that is rigged to fail the district attorney's office, and for me, being a victim in two cases, I'm completely walking away from the other one because I simply can't do that again.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Chuck is the president, right?
He's the acting chair, vice chair.
President of the county.
Or the vice.
No, well, yeah, Chair Claire Hall is chair of the board. Walter Chuck is the vice chair.
Okay, but he has now been appointed the county administrator manager. Is that right?
No.
What's been his title since Claire's been gone? Because he's running the meetings.
Yeah, he's running the meetings, but has never been officially designated as chair.
So there is a position open that has to be filed, and it's going to be in charge of the administrator.
Yes.
But that has not been filled yet.
No, it
And
hasn't.
is that the problem with your hiring freeze?
No, there's been 92 positions filled in the county because as the president of the union, I got CC'd all new hires. So they've hired literally almost 100 new positions. They actually took a piece of the role of our detective and made a whole new department at almost $400,000. And I forget how many people are working in that department alone. They have fired 1, 2, 3, and gave an ultimatum to a fourth, and I will be the fifth. I'm not allowed on county property.
So in regard to our organizational structure, I can unpack that for you. Right now, we have 3 commissioners, and we have ordinance created a county administrator position. The board delegates its authority to, but at this point in time, the administrator is uncertain, right? But Chair Hall, through the last board action, which I do not approve, but Hall and Chuck voted to make Chair Hall the administrator. I have heard that Hall delegated that authority to the HR director, but I have not confirmed that or not.
And my understanding is that an email.
Right, it has not been confirmed.
Right.
I asked.
My understanding is that there was an email that went out from Commissioner Hall to the management team, which is supposed to be comprised of the department head of every department in the county, including the district attorney's office, where she delegated her authority as the county administrator to David Collier, who's the director of HR. I did not get that email as I have been removed from the management team group email list.
And last week I asked the board to discuss that so we can all get clear exactly what is going on. And it wasn't, allowed to be discussed.
So
By the commissioners.
Your power as a commissioner has basically been taken away.
Well, I mean, you delegate practical management of certain aspects of your authority to a person. Obviously, in this case, it's uncertain who's doing that, but ultimately, it's really really a delegation of authority and management of things, but never truly your full responsibility as a commissioner.
You have to say it, it sounds like it's something goes to.
The last board order to make Chair Hall simultaneously the county commissioner is something I opposed, and I had already, proposed previously that we do interim models, instead of doing that. Who's outvoted?
And Casey, will there be a new, board chair come January?
Well, historically, the board just rotates, individuals through the chair and vice chair positions. Again, that's historically, and it is something that the board votes on at the beginning of every year.
So, just a very short story. Everybody's talking about who's running things, who's in charge of things, who's actually making decisions.
Right.
Let me tell you who's making decisions, okay? So, as mayor, as an elected official, when there was a vacancy on the board, I reached out to the chair and asked the chair to just give me a couple moments of time, because I felt like, I represent a good portion of the communities in our county as well. I just wanted to be heard on behalf of my community. I made the phone calls first, trying to get that his time, didn't get a response. 3 phone calls, not a response. So I wrote an email, no response. I resorted to the old way, and that is wrote a handwritten letter with a stamp of sluts on it, didn't get a response. Extremely frustrated, finally took it to Facebook, and the chair said, respond. The first response I got was on Facebook from our county chair, and it was, "You're not being honest. You didn't send any of those. I have heard nothing from you." However, 15 minutes after that was posted, I got a private message that said, "Hey, I'm sorry I didn't respond to you, marijuana, but I didn't respond to you because county council told me not to." That's who's making the decision.
That's right, yeah, I was gonna say, maybe not the first one.
Okay, so we're gonna take one more question and then we're going to wrap up.
So I've been taught my whole career here that in a position of, and I could be wrong, and I don't mean Commissioner Tate, it's not only that you. But if you're an elected official, you're paid by the community, and you know that someone's breaking the law, and you can be held with some liability personally. So I thank you guys for sticking up and keep doing what you're doing, but don't bail in with me, because this might not turn out too good. Because I think some rules have been, they're breaking rules, breaking laws. I don't know how hard and how high this community's gonna have to go to resolve this, but Mayor over there, Sluts, brings up a good point that they're doing it to all of us. I mean, who's gonna pay the fine? This lady over here, all of her stuff, who pays that fine? Where's the accountability on your part? Are you gonna pay that fine? Because you're one of the commissioners, right? We're gonna split that fine up with you 3? No, we pay it. So it's like, where's their accountability? Where's the charge on them? 0. You just fall right back on the taxpayers. Yep.
And I also think there's a problem with Julie, because she's not invited you, right, with what's going on between the other two. Has she been a counsel to you?
Occasionally.
So Casey, as we wrap up, can you please give, citizens, again, contact information on how to provide public comment?
Yes, okay. Yes, so, a great way to reach out to the boards, you can find it on the website, and the email is boc@co.lincoln.or.us. It's on the website. Again, when you send that email, it is received by staff. Staff should distribute that to commissioners and then put it in to the online public comments. Okay, so
something and you don't see it in the online public comment, then you would want to probably contact Casey directly, right?
Yes, yeah, I've got cards over there, okay? Or emailing all commissioners is something you can do as well. Each of our emails individually are available online too. Maybe one in all methods.
And you do have to register 24 hours in advance to provide public comment online?
Yes,
New thing.
public comment rules changed for virtual comment, and you need to submit that comment by noon the day before the meeting to get on virtual. Not rules that I made up personally. And so, but just be aware of that if you are submitting or wanting to appear virtually in person, you need to do that well in advance if you're participating virtually. But other than that, the commissioners meet the first and third Wednesdays of every month at 10 at the Lee County Courthouse.
Do you have anything you want to say in wrapping up?
I just wanted to thank you guys all for giving up your time and coming and joining us today. Again, I know it's the holiday season and there are many other things you could be doing, but I appreciate you listening to me and asking questions. I will be around probably for another 10 to 15 minutes. I do have to run up to Lincoln City for the next one. But I want you to know that what I really care about is transparency, is for you to understand what's happening in my office. And if you ever have a question, please feel free to email me. I've had citizens do that before. I've met with citizens who have questions, want answers. I want you to feel that I'm approachable and that you can come talk to me if you have any issues or questions. But I really think that part of educating the community is having these conversations and being able to answer questions. Because if you're not getting answers to your questions, then I'm not doing my job properly either. So thank you so much for coming in and being part of this.
Jenna is the 5th EA that I've worked for in Lincoln County. And Jenna has successfully managed the budget. Jenna is not asking for more positions. She's just saying, give us a few of what we've already done. So I want to stress that. We're not asking for more.